Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 57 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam 4th Canto. And we are in chapter 23, Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home. And today we're starting section 3, verse 25 to 29, titled, The Demigods Glorify Archie, who is the wife of King Prithu. First of all, though, let us chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachayane, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadi Shatarne, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha, Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. So yes, the demigods glorify Archie. Verse 25 to verse 29. Let us read through the verses. The wives, so this is verse 25. The wives of the demigods said, well, let me just mention, when we finished yesterday, then in verse 24 said that when Archie entered the funeral fire of her husband Prithu Maharaj, then the demigods started showering flowers and really glorifying. The wives of the demigods particularly showered flowers on the funeral pyre. And the verse says, then they began to talk amongst themselves as follows. So here, that's the situation here. Maybe she's just sitting in the middle of the fire right now, I don't know. But they're glorifying her in that context. So verse 25, the wives of the demigods said, all glories to Queen Archie. We can see that this queen of the great King Prithu, the emperor of all the kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body, exactly as the goddess of fortune serves the supreme personality of Godhead, Yagyesha, or Vishnu. Verse 26. The wives of the demigods continued, just see how this chaste lady, Archie, by dint of her inconceivable pious activities, is still following her husband upward as far as we can see. Verse 27. In this material world, every human being has a short span of life, but those who are engaged in devotional service go back home, back to Godhead, for they're actually on the path of liberation. For such persons, there is nothing which is not available. Verse 28. Any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining a human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult tasks of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. 29. The great sage Maitreya continued speaking. My dear Vidura, when the wives of the denizens of heaven were thus talking amongst themselves, Queen Archie reached the planet which her husband Maharaj Prithu, the topmost self-realized soul, had attained. Right. So, those are the verses here. And let's go back and go through them again and look at the purports. So verse 25, the wives of the demigods said, all glory is to Queen Archi. We can see that this queen of the great King Pritu, the emperor of all the kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body, exactly as the goddess of fortune serves the supreme personality of Godhead, Yagyesha, or Vishnu. So, right, Prabhupada says, in this verse, the words Yagyesham Shriya Vadur Iva indicate that Archi served her husband like Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, serves her husband, Lord Vishnu. And Prabhupada points out that we can see in the history of the world, for example, when Lord Krishna was ruling Dwaraka, Rukmini was the chief queen, but she served him personally, in spite of having many maid servants to assist her. Similarly, in Vaikuntha, the goddess of fortune personally serves Narayan, although there are thousands of devotees, even more than thousands possibly, who are just ready to serve, just completely ready. So this standard, this practice is followed by the wives of the demigods, and previously the wives of men would do so also. In Vedic civilization, the husband and wife, they would never separate. There was no man-made divorce laws, particularly because nobody wanted to separate. I mean, practically speaking, nobody wanted to divorce. They were so happy together. So we should understand the necessity for maintaining family life. Yeah, it's just so important that families be stable. And Prabhupada's suggesting that these divorce laws should be abolished. So husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness, follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan or Krishna Rukmini or Archi Pritu. So in this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. Otherwise, peace and harmony, gee whiz, we would say good luck. Verse 26. The wives of the demigods continued, just see how this chaste lady Archi, by dint of her inconceivable pious activities, is still following her husband upward, as far as we can see. Okay, let's look at the purport. So, Pritu and Archi, they're at this point, they're in airplanes. They each have an airplane. And they're passing, they're speeding through the universe, and they're going out of the vision of the ladies in the heavenly planets. And the ladies are astonished to see how they are achieving such exalted positions. So, although these ladies who are speaking, they're the wives of the demigods, basically, denizens of the heavenly planets, demigods. And Pritu had been an inhabitant of a much lower planet, this planet Earth. But he and his wife, Pritu and Archi, went beyond those heavenly planets upward to Vaikuntha. Prabhupada says that the word urdhvam, which means upward, is significant here, because the ladies are speaking, the ladies who are speaking, they're from the higher planetary systems, including the moon, sun, Venus, up to Brahmaloka. Yeah. But Prithu and Archie, they're going beyond that. So beyond Brahmaloka, of course, is the spiritual sky. So the word urdhvam, upward, beyond Brahmaloka, indicates Vaikuntha. Prithu and Archie are going there. So it also, Prabhupada makes the point, it also indicates that as soon as Prithu and Archie left their material bodies, they immediately manifested spiritual bodies and got on spiritual airplanes, which could penetrate the material universe and go to the spiritual sky. An interesting point Prabhupada makes, their being in two separate planes shows that even after their bodies were burned in the funeral fire, they still remain separate persons, separate individuals. So, in other words, they didn't lose their individualities or become void or something along those lines, which the impersonalists and others, Buddhists, might possibly imagine. So, right, there's a second paragraph here. Let's have a look at that. So the ladies in the higher planets, heavenly planets, they're able to see higher and lower. When they looked down to this planet, they saw Prithu's body being burned, and they saw Archie entering the fire. But when they looked up, they could see how they're being carried in two airplanes to Vaikuntha. So this is possible by, Srila Prabhupada says, Durvibhavyena karmana, inconceivable activity. So these two words appear in the last line of the Sanskrit, by Durvibhavyena karmana, by inconceivable activities. So Prithu, of course, is a pure devotee. He's actually an incarnation of the Lord, but he's a pure devotee. And Archie, his wife, just followed her husband. That's all. Just followed her husband. And so they can both be considered pure devotees and capable of doing inconceivable things which are not possible for ordinary men. And even Prabhupada makes the point that even ordinary men cannot even take to devotional service. And ordinary women cannot maintain such vows of chastity, following their husbands in just all respects, absolutely. So Prabhupada makes, it's an important point. It's a very interesting point. A woman does not need high qualifications. But if she simply follows in the footsteps of her devotee husband, they both attain liberation, they both go to Vaikuntha. And this is evinced, Prabhupada says, which means this is shown or made obvious by the inconceivable activities of Prithu Maharaj and his wife. Okay, let's move on, verse 27. In this material world, every human being has a short span of life, but those who are engaged in devotional service go back home, back to Godhead, for they're actually on the path of liberation. For such persons, there's nothing which is not available. So this is still the wives of the demigods speaking. In the purport here, Srila Prabhupada says, Anityam asukam lokam Imam Prapya Bhajasva Mam. He's quoting Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 33 and saying that this material world is asukam, full of misery. Asukam would mean happiness. Asukam would mean no happiness. And at the same time is very flickering, anityam, not eternal, very temporary. So the thing is that therefore one's only duty is to do devotional service. And that's the best use of the human form of life. Just engage in devotional service. So devotees who are constantly engaged in devotional service, they achieve not only all material benefits, but also all spiritual benefits, because at the end they go back to Godhead. And as this verse says, their destination is Bhagavat Padam. And Prabhupada explains, Padam means the abode, Bhagavat means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So thus the destination of the devotees is the abode of the Lord. Right, so on we go to the second paragraph. So Prabhupada points out, in this verse there's the word Naishkarmyam, which means transcendental knowledge. This is significant. Unless one comes to that platform, transcendental knowledge, and renders devotional service, one is not perfect. So generally, jnana, yoga, and karma are done life after life before you get the chance to do pure devotional service. Yeah. And the opportunity for pure devotional service is given by the grace of a pure devotee. And in this way only, one can attain liberation. So here the wives of the demigods, Prabhupada says, they are repenting, because although they had the opportunity of this higher birth, heavenly planets, long lifetime, all material comforts, but they weren't as fortunate as Prithu Maharaj and Archie. Prithu and Archie were surpassing them. So Prabhupada, the way Prabhupada puts it is interesting. In other words, Prithu and his wife scorned promotion to the higher planets. Scorn means they just rejected it. Now, who wants that? Take it away. That's what scorning means. We don't want promotion to higher planets, even up to Brahmaloka, because they were attaining a position which is just so much higher. It's incomparable. And the Lord affirms this. Well, the Lord affirms in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, famous verse, Abrama Bhuvana Loka Puna Arvarta Norajana. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, they're all places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. And then Prabhupada goes on to quote Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, verse 21. When they have thus enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Yeah, people who have been in the heavenly planets, when they've enjoyed for some time and their karma is used up, they just come back to earth again. They have to come back here and just have another go, start from the beginning again. A new chapter, Prabhupada says, of pious activities. So therefore, Bhagavatam 1.5.12 says Naishkaramam apyachuta bhava varjitam. The path of liberation is not at all secure unless you attain devotional service. Even if you go to the Brahma Jyoti, there's every chance of falling back to the material world. Not just every chance, but it's more or less inevitable. If that's possible, people go to the Brahma Jyoti and fall down, then what to speak of the karmis and yogis who can only go to the heavenly planets? They can't even go to the Brahma Jyoti. So, they're definitely going to remain in the material world. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thus, the wives of the denizens of the higher planetary systems did not very much appreciate the results of karma jnana and yoga. Verse 28. Any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining a human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult tasks of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. It's very likely that we've all had some experience of someone becoming envious of us, and, it's unpleasant. But if you're envious of yourself, that's just another level of unfortunateness. So Prabhupada explains here, in the material world, people are doing a lot to get a little success in sense gratification. Yeah, the karmis are doing very difficult things. Big factories, big cities, scientific discoveries. And those who are doing karma kandya, they're doing costly sacrifices to go to the heavenly planets. The yogis are trying to achieve similar goals by tedious mystic yoga. It's such a drag. And jnanis are doing mental speculation to get release from material nature. So the thing is, in different ways, people are here doing very difficult tasks for sense gratification. And ultimately, they're all considered sense gratification because they demand some facility for material existence. And the results of all of these, all of them, they're temporary, including the jnanis. So therefore, the fruits of the karmis, jnanis, and yogis, they're ephemeral. Ephemeral means sort of, what would you say, sort of hazy, unclear. And Krishna says these types of activities are meant for people with small intelligence or even no intelligence. Yeah. So the word vishaya denotes sense gratification. Obviously the karmis want that, the yogis also, but on a higher level, like miraculous things. Yeah, becoming smaller than the smallest. And the jnanis ultimately also want sense gratification, become one with God. That's the biggest sense gratification of all, to become one with God, to become God. So they all, karmis, jnanis, yogis, all three want sense gratification, just on different levels. But devotees are not interested in sense gratification, just want to serve the Lord. And they'll do anything, they're happy in any condition. Yeah. So here the wives of the demigods are condemning those people who are doing sense gratification as, what is the word they use? vanchita, cheated. They are cheated. And those who are doing these things are, in a sense, killing themselves. So, Prabhupada quotes Bhagavatam 11:20-17. Let's just read the translation. When one wants to cross a large ocean, he requires a strong boat. It is said that this human form of life is a good boat by which one can cross the ocean of nescience. In the human form of life, one can obtain the guidance of a good navigator, the spiritual master. One also gets a favorable wind by the mercy of Krishna, and that wind is Krishna's instructions. So human body is the boat, instructions of the Lord are the favorable winds, spiritual master is the navigator, and the spiritual master knows well how to adjust the sails to catch the winds favorably, steer the boat to its destination. Any of you who've had experience with boats which have sails, not just motors, engines, you would know it's not so simple at all. So if you don't take advantage of this, the human body, the instructions of the Lord, and navigate a spiritual master, you're wasting your human form of life, and this is suicide. So the word labdva pavargyam is significant here. Srila Prabhupada says. Prabhupada refers to Jiva Goswami, apavargyam is the path of liberation. But it's not referring to merging into the impersonal Brahman, but to more like Salokyadi city, attaining the loka, the planet where the Lord resides. So Prabhupada mentions there are 5 types of liberation. One of them is sayuja, or merging into the Supreme, or merging into the Brahmajyoti. But seeing there's a chance of falling down from the Brahmajyoti, and actually we know it's not just a chance, but it's maybe not totally inevitable, but it's probably quite close to inevitable. So Jiva Goswami advises us not to get into sayuja, or merging, but rather go back home to Godhead. So therefore the words sa vanchita indicate that once a person has the human form of life, if he doesn't prepare to go back home, back to Godhead, he's cheated. So the position of the non-devotees who are not interested in going back to Godhead, it's lamentable. Verse 29, the great sage Maitreya continued speaking. So it was the wives of the demigods speaking in this section up to this point. But now here's Maitreya. My dear Vidura, when the wives of the denizens of heaven were thus talking amongst themselves, Queen Archie reached the planet which her husband, Maharaj Prithu, the topmost self-realized soul, had attained. So Prabhupada, in the purport, explains that the Vedic literatures explain that a woman who does sati, entering the funeral fire of the husband, goes to the same planet as the husband. And in the material world, there's a planet Patiloka, also Pitriloka. But here, Patiloka doesn't refer to a planet in the material world, because Prithu Maharaj went there, but he went back to Godhead, so it's a different Patiloka. Patiloka means the planet of the husband. Pati means the husband. So Archie also went there. And in the material world, when a woman dies with her husband, she's with him again in the next life. So they went to Vaikuntha together. And Prabhupada makes a very important point. In Vaikuntha, there's so many wives and husbands, but they don't give birth to children. They don't have sex life. In Vaikuntha, the husbands and their wives are very beautiful, extremely beautiful. And they are attracted to each other. But they don't enjoy sex life. In fact, they consider sex life to be not relishable, because they're absorbed in Krishna consciousness, glorifying the Lord, and they're relishing that. So Bhaktivinoda, in the second paragraph, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that husbands and wives can turn their houses into Vaikuntha here in this material world. They can live in Vaikuntha by having deities serving them at home, according to Shastra. Then they'll never feel the sex urge. Yes, because they've got a higher taste. This is the test of advancement in devotional service. Soon as you're detached from sex life, proportionally attached to devotional service, you experience living in Vaikuntha. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in the ultimate issue, there's actually no material world. But when one forgets the service of the Lord and engages himself in the service of his senses, he is said to be living in the material world. So we go on to the last section, verses 30 to 39, the benefits of hearing about King Prithu. All right, let's read through the verses. Verse 30. Maitreya continued, the greatest of all devotees, Maharaj Prithu, was very powerful, and his character was liberal, magnificent, and magnanimous. Thus I've described him to you as far as possible. 31. Any person who describes the great characteristics of King Prithu with faith and determination, whether he reads or hears of them himself, or helps others to hear of them, is certain to attain the very planet which Maharaj Prithu attained. In other words, such a person also returns home to the Vaikuntha planets, back to Godhead. Yes, well, we did mention a couple of days ago when we went through just introducing the different sections in this chapter, we did mention that this section and the benedictions which are offered for hearing about Prithu, they're really amazing. So we described we've given the title to this section. We call it the benefits of hearing about King Prithu. Okay, so where are we now? 32. If one hears of the characteristics of Prithu Maharaj and is a Brahmin, he becomes perfectly qualified with Brahminical powers. If he's a Kshatriya, he becomes a king of the world. If he's a Vaishya, he becomes a master of other Vaishyas and many animals. And if he's a Sudra, he becomes the topmost devotee. 33. It does not matter whether one is a man or woman. Anyone who, with great respect, hears this narration of Maharaj Prithu will become the parent of many children, if without children, and will become the richest, if without money. 34. Also, one who hears this narration 3 times will become very reputable, very famous, if he is not recognized in society, and he'll become a great scholar if he's illiterate. In other words, hearing of the narrations of Prithu Maharaj is so auspicious that it drives away all bad luck. 35. By hearing the narration of Prithu Maharaj, one can become great, increases duration of life, gain promotion to the heavenly planets, and counteract the contaminations of this age of Kali. In addition, one can promote the causes of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Therefore, from all sides, it is advisable for a materialistic person who is interested in such things to read and hear the narrations of the life and character of Prithu Maharaj. Verse 36. If a king who is desirous of attaining victory and ruling power chants the narration of Prithu Maharaj 3 times before going forth on his chariot, all subordinate kings will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him, as they rendered them unto Maharaj Prithu, simply upon his order. 37. A pure devotee who is executing the different processes of devotional service may be situated in the transcendental position, being completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, but even he, while discharging devotional service, must hear, read, and induce others to hear about the character and life of Prithu Maharaj. 38. The great sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, I have as far as possible spoken the narrations about Prithu Maharaj, which enrich one's devotional attitude. Whoever takes advantage of these benefits also goes back home, back to Godhead, like Maharaj Prithu." 39. Whoever with great reverence and adoration regularly reads, chants, and describes the history of Maharaj Prithu's activities will certainly increase unflinching faith and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord's lotus feet are the boat by which one can cross the ocean of nescience. So here we go, devotees, going through again the benefits of hearing about King Prithu from verse 30 to verse 39. So verse 30, Maitreya continued, "The greatest of all devotees, Maharaj Prithu, was very powerful, and his character was liberal, magnificent, and magnanimous. Thus I've described him to you as far as possible." So Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that in this verse, the word Bhagavatama is significant. Bhagavat especially is used to refer to the Lord. The word Bhagavan is derived from Bhagavat. So, as we have mentioned, sometimes we see the term Bhagavan is used for great devotees like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Narada Muni. We just read a couple of weeks ago, I forget exactly, a little while ago, not long, in this 4th canto, Srila Prabhupada said that the Lord, who is Bhagavan, the possessor of all opulences, he becomes the property of the devotee. So, and the Lord, of course, he is Bhagavan, and if you become the property of Bhagavan, if Bhagavan becomes your property, you're also Bhagavan. So here, Prithu Maharaj, this is the case with him, he's described here as the best of the Bhagavans, best of the Lords. So someone can only be addressed like this if he's really very great and very extraordinary. Yeah, if he attains the greatest goal after disappearance, or completely knows the difference between knowledge and ignorance. In other words, this term Bhagavan should not be used for ordinary persons. there was one sort of yogi type fellow or something in India who passed away, I don't know, several years ago, not a very long time, and he was addressed as Bhagavan, but he was not a Bhagavan. He was engaged in illicit sex life and accumulating material things. So this term Bhagavan is very special, must only be used for very, very special people. Verse 31. Any person who describes the great characteristics of King Prithu with faith and determination, whether he reads or hears of them himself or helps others to hear of them, is certain to attain the very planet which Maharaj Prithu attained. In other words, such a person also returns home to the Vaikuntha planets, back to Godhead. So, yeah, Prabhupada explains in devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, specially stressed, Bhakti begins with hearing and chanting. When we speak of Vishnu, we refer to that which is related to him. Famous verse from Shiva Purana, Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samarchanam. So here it's explained that hearing and chanting about a Vaishnav is as good as hearing and chanting about Vishnu. Yes. And Maitreya has explained, anyone who hears about Prithu also attains the planet where Prithu went. That's what is stated in this verse. So there's no duality between Vishnu and Vaishnav. This is called Advaya Gyan, non-dual knowledge. So Prabhupada quotes the 7th verse of Gurvastikam, Sakshadhari Tvenasa Shastra. You all must know that verse. The spiritual master is honored as much as the Lord. Yes. And there's a second paragraph to the purport. The supreme Vaishnav is the spiritual master. He's non-different from the Lord. Yes. And Lord Chaitanya chanted the names of the gopis, who are devotees, of course. Some of his Sanskrit students criticized him. He became angry with them. And because of things like this, not just this, but there's some other things like this, Lord Chaitanya decided to take sannyas. So, because he wasn't being taken seriously enough as a householder. So, worship of the gopis or the devotees is as good as devotional service to the Lord. Even the Lord says that devotional service to the devotees is better than service to him. Yeah. The Sahajas, they're interested in Krishna's pastimes, not interested in the devotees. So therefore you can see they're not on a high level. Just focus on Krishna, they don't focus on the devotees. 32. If one hears of the characteristics of Prithu Maharaj and is a Brahmin, he becomes perfectly qualified with Brahminical powers. If he's a Kshatriya, he becomes a king of the world. If he's a Vaishya, he becomes a master of other Vaishyas and many animals. And if he's a Sudra, he becomes the topmost devotee. So, repeatedly Prabhupada's recommending one should become a devotee, worship the Lord, become a devotee. Akama sarvakarma va mokshakama udarade, Bhagavatam says. Whatever you want, just worship the Lord, and then you'll achieve perfection because through becoming a devotee of the Lord. Prabhupada makes important point that in this verse, the reference to Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras means those who are born in those families. Yeah. So, but whatever you are, you can attain perfection simply by hearing and chanting. Second paragraph. Taking birth, even in a Brahmin family, is not the main thing. You must have some real Brahminical Shakti, Brahma Tejas. Taking birth in a royal family, similarly, is not such a big thing. Or a Vaishya family. Yeah. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, a person who's born in a Sudra family can become greater than a Brahmin simply by accepting devotional service and giving oral reception to the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees. 33. It does not matter whether one is a man or a woman. Anyone who, with great respect, hears this narration of Maharaj Prithu will become the parent of many children, if without children, and will become the richest, if without money. Interesting benedictions, aren't they? So generally, the materialists who want money and etc., they worship the demigods. Sri Aishvarya Prajapsava, Prabhupada quotes. So in the second canto of the Bhagavatam, there's also talk of worshipping demigods for benedictions. But here it's said that if you just hear about the life and character of Prithu Maharaj, you can have both riches, children, in great quantities. Just read through those pastimes. Read through this narration 3 times as recommended. And those who are struggling materially, that will benefit so much from hearing and chanting about the Lord, they won't have to go to the demigods. Right, so Prabhupada says suprajatama is very significant here. It's just, surrounded by many children. And Prabhupada makes the point that you may have many children, but you may not have many who are really qualified. Oh yeah. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, here, however, it's stated, suprajatama, that all the children thus attained by hearing about Prithu Maharaj would be qualified in education, wealth, beauty, and strength, everything complete. Verse 34. Also, one who hears this narration 3 times will become very reputable if he's not recognized in society, means very famous. And he'll become a great scholar if he's illiterate. In other words, hearing of the narrations of Prithu Maharaj is so auspicious that it drives away all bad luck. So anyway, there's a purport here, shortish. In material life, everyone wants profit, adoration, distinction. But if we associate with the Lord or with his devotee, you can easily become opulent in all respects if you do devotional service. So simply by hearing Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, you can become recognized as a great scholar. Material world is full of danger, but the devotee has no fear, because devotional service is so auspicious, it counteracts all types of bad luck or inauspiciousness, removes bad karma. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, since hearing about Prithu Maharaj is one of the items of devotional service, shravanam, naturally hearing about him brings all good fortune. 35. By hearing the narration of Prithu Maharaj, One can become great, increases duration of life, gain promotion to the heavenly planets, and counteract the contaminations of this age of Kali. In addition, one can promote the causes of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Therefore, from all sides, it is advisable for a materialistic person who's interested in such things to read and hear the narrations of the life and character of Prithu Maharaj. So if you do that, if you hear and chant about Prithu, you'll just naturally become a devotee, and your material desires will become fulfilled as Krishna is willing. So therefore, Bhagavatam, well, we saw it just a couple of verses ago, 2, 3, 10, akama, sarvakama va, etc. And Prabhupada gives a type of translation here. If a person wants to return home back to Godhead, or wants to become a pure devotee, akama means desireless, or wants some material prosperity, sakama, which can mean sarvakama, all desires, or wants to merge into the existence of the Brahmana effulgence, moksha kama, desires liberation, he's recommended to take to the path of devotional service and hear and chant of Lord Vishnu or of his devotee. And Prabhupada says, isn't this just incredibly important? This is the sum and substance of all Vedic literatures. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vedaischa sarvir aham eva vedya. The purpose of Vedic knowledge is to understand Krishna and his devotees. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, whenever we speak of Krishna, we refer to his devotees also, for he is not alone. He's never nirvishesha or shunya, without variety or zero. Krishna is full of variety, and as soon as Krishna is present, there cannot be any question of void. Verse 36, if a king who is desirous of attaining victory and ruling power chants the narration of Prithu Maharaj 3 times before going forth on his chariot, all subordinate kings will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him as they rendered them unto Maharaj Prithu, simply upon his order. So this is what Kshatriyas want, of course. They want to rule as much as they can, make other kings subordinate, rule the whole world if possible. Same at the time of Prithu Maharaj. He was the only emperor at the time, like Yudhisthira, like Parikshit. And sometimes the subordinate kings rebelled. The emperor had to go out and chastise them. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, this process of chanting the narrations of the life and character of Prithu Maharaj is recommended for conquering kings if they want to fulfill their desire to rule the world. If you want to fulfill your desire, then you should undergo this process, chanting about Prithu Maharaj. 37. A pure devotee who's executing the different processes of devotional service may be situated in the transcendental position, being completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. But even he, while discharging devotional service, must hear, read, and induce others to hear about the character and life of Prithu Maharaj. So yes, there's a purport here. Prabhupada mentions that a certain type of neophyte, there are different types of neophytes, but a certain type is anxious to hear pastimes, especially Rasa Leela, that style of pastime. So such a devotee should know by this instruction that the pastimes of Prithu Maharaj are non-different from those of the Lord. So you must also hear about them, extremely important. Don't think that I don't need to, because I'm hearing about Rasa Leela. That's a big nonsense. So, Prithu, as an ideal king, exhibited all talents, such as Prabhupada lists out some: how to rule the citizens, how to educate the citizens, how to develop the state economically, how to fight enemies, how to perform big sacrifices. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thus it is recommended for the sahajya, the neophyte devotee. This is the point that Prabhupada introduced at the beginning of this purport, this paragraph right now. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thus it's recommended for the sahajya, or the neophyte devotee, to hear, chant, and get others to hear about the activities of Prithu Maharaj, even though one may think himself to be in the transcendental position of advanced devotional service, which the sahajiyas are prone to think they are. 38. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, I have as far as possible spoken the narrations about Prithu Maharaj, which enrich one's devotional attitude. Whoever takes advantages of these benefits also goes back home, back to Godhead, like Maharaj Prithu. So, Prabhupada makes the point that the word shravayet, which appeared in a previous verse, indicates we shouldn't just read for ourselves, but we should get others to read and hear. That's preaching. Lord Chaitanya recommended this practice, yare dekitare kaha, Krishna Upadesh. Whoever you meet, simply talk with them about the instructions given by Krishna. Tell him about the narrations about Krishna. So Prithu Maharaj's history is as potent as the activities of Lord Krishna. One shouldn't make a distinction between the pastimes of Lord Krishna and the activities of Prithu Maharaj. And whenever possible, we should try to induce others to hear about Prithu. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, one should not only read of his pastimes for one's own benefit, but should induce others to read and hear about them also. In this way, everyone can be benefited. And here's the last verse, 39. Whoever with great reverence and adoration regularly reads, chants, and describes the history of Maharaj Prithu's activities will certainly increase unflinching faith and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord's lotus feet are the boat by which one can cross the ocean of nescience. Right, so Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport. The word Bhava Sindhu is significant here. The lotus feet of the Lord are known as Mahat Padam. Mahat Padam. Well, actually, Prabhupada, you know what he says? That the word Bhava Sindhu Potapade is significant. Sorry. So the lotus feet of the Lord are known as Mahat Padam. Total source of material existence rests on his lotus feet. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, everything emanates from him, whole cosmic manifestation, ocean of nescience is resting on his lotus feet. So therefore, when a person is a devotee or a pure devotee, this ocean of nescience is minimized. So one who's taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord doesn't need to cross over the ocean. He's already crossed it by being at the lotus feet of the Lord. So if we hear and chant the glories of the Lord or his devotee, we can become firmly fixed in service to his lotus feet. And this position can also be easily achieved by narrating the history of life of Prithu Maharaj every day. So Prabhupada makes the point, the word Vimukta Sangha is also significant in this connection. Because we associate with the three qualities of material nature, our position in this material world is full of dangers. But when we engage in the devotional service of the Lord by the process of Shravanam and Kirtanam, we immediately become Vimukta Sangha, or liberated. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.